We have forces defending the north and also training in order to deal with Hezbollah. There have been several drills of the IDF preparing for a possible ground incursion in the north. This probably won't happen before we finish our missions in the Gaza Strip, but the IDF is preparing for such a scenario, and also understanding that there is a connection between a possible retaliation of Israel against Iran, possibly against nuclear sites or other sites, and a full-scale war in the north with Hezbollah.
Since the war began, we're basically in a very in a diplomatic battle for the survival of Israel, together with a military battle. We have been bombed now by the Iranians a few days ago, and actually during the attack by the Iranians, we saw that a few countries actually supported Israel, and there's now an international alliance together with the State of Israel. Countries like the United States, France, and Britain and others combined their forces to defend Israel from this assault. This shows us, after the attack on the 7th of October, where we were attacked by the Hamas in a very murderous way, the world supported us. But since then, it started to talk more about Gaza, about more problems and so on, and the support seemed to be loosening up a little bit. We're now in a situation where the world sees again that this is a battle for the survival of Israel against people, against countries and organizations that want to destroy Israel, and eventually we will also win on the diplomatic front.
Okay, so October 7th had a lot of miracles and a lot of coincidences in my moshav. Our moshav is approximately 7 kilometers from the border with Gaza, and we're more further away than the kibbutzim that suffered the terrible massacres. Now, we had immediate response team, or emergency squad, and we had a lot of coincidences because the commander, he volunteers in every organization possible. He's also in MADA, also in Ichud Hatzala, and he's also in Border Patrol. And by coincidence, he volunteered in Simchat Torah and Border Patrol, and he got their vehicle. The vehicle has a special radio that communicates, with the whole police, because on the morning of October 7th, we had no notification from anyone, not from the army, and not from our regional council. But he, the commander, already heard at 6:40 a.m., he heard the policemen fighting for their lives, practically, and getting killed. So he knew exactly what to do. He closed the entire moshav, he closed the gate, and he called up all of the security squad, which is it consists of civilians actually, because only now they have been drafted into the army and they are soldiers. But until October 7th, they were just civilians, that are volunteering in the security squad. So we called all of them, the ones that have pistols, some don't. And as soon as he heard about everything that's happening and people getting killed and the penetration of terrorists into Israel, he quickly closed the moshav, and he put a squad in front of the gate. The gate was locked, as well as the pedestrian gate. And at 8:30 a.m., there came a pickup truck with 8 terrorists and their rifle. They had guns, and we had nothing. We had maybe 2 and 2 pistols, and they were standing there in front of the gate, 16 of the security squad. And I guess that this team that came, there were a few teams. One came to kill, one came for the looting. I don't know which one this was, but they saw people at the entrance, and they just, they probably thought, okay, everyone is ready here. They had no idea we had no ammunition and no guns, and they just continued onwards. And because we had the Border Patrol car, we announced on the radio, because you couldn't say it anywhere else, because there was no phone connectivity with the police. So we announced on the radio that there is a pickup with terrorists, and it's going towards the intersection with Netivot. A day after, they came from the Border Patrol, and they told us who sent this message. And we told them it was us. They told us, you know, we killed all of them at the intersection. So it was due to this. So, and of course, I don't know if people know about the story that the army took all of our security squad's weapons 3-4 years ago because they were afraid that they will be stolen and used in the Arab society against us. So that was our story. Many miracles. We had another miracle that we had 2 terrorists. They kidnapped a car and they tried to enter the moshav from the back gate. But by coincidence, a policeman saw them and he just followed them and he killed them before they managed to enter. Another kind of miracle is there were hundreds of terrorists running towards you know, after they finished with the moshavim and kibbutzim on the front, they started getting further and closer to us. And there were hundreds of them running. And earlier, there was, I don't know, probably one of the soldiers inside the kibbutzim, he called somebody from the army, from the Air Force, and he told them, listen, there is a brigade of paratroopers. Bring them in your choppers. There were 2 choppers. Each one takes about 18 soldiers only because in case, you know, there should be a problem so not everybody gets killed all at once. They took 50 each and they tried to land between Alumim and Be'eri, which are right on the border with Gaza. But the chopper, the pilot, he saw all of the terrorists there. The guy who sent them, he didn't know that everything was already occupied, the whole territory over there by terrorists. So instead of landing next to Be'eri and Alumim, he came closer to our moshavim and kibbutzim, and one of the choppers got hit, quickly unpacked all of the 50 soldiers, and they started fighting hundreds of terrorists that were coming towards us. So that was like the 3rd miracle that day that we had.
Wow. You know, to experience a miracle, on the one hand, it's divine and it's inspiring, but on the other hand, in the context of all the tragedies, how do the residents here go about their daily life? How do the kids come back to the playgrounds and the schools? What does life look like right now here?
So it's only about a month ago that the moshav came back. We were 6 months in hotels dispersed all over the country, and only 70% came back. Most families with kids did not return. They are renting apartments and other places near the center of Israel. And the ones that came back are very, I wouldn't say traumatized because it's not a trauma, it's still happening. But for example, I don't hang laundry in the evening. After it's dark, I can't. And we've got people that are doing usually their evening walks or even in the morning, daily walks in the streets, they don't. And people are more afraid, also for their kids. For example, the kids in grades 1st and 2nd, in school, they have, school ends at 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. And 1st and 2nd graders, they stay until 4 because they can't come back home, and then they give them lunch, and there is like a kids club in the schools. And in Israel, it's the same all over the country. A kid who's in 3rd grade, a normal kid in a normal city, can go back home and be without his parents from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m., 3 hours. Over here, it is impossible. So now we've opened also a kids club in the moshav. We have female soldiers that are teaching them. We have clubs for them. We have a coordinator for kids. We have games. We give them lunch. But it's not something that we would have done usually. So things are different. Also events that we want to celebrate. For example, Independence Day. And I'm not saying celebrate in a manner of, you know, festive, because it's very, very difficult these days. But we want to hold a ceremony, a very respectful ceremony, thinking of the hostages and the soldiers. And we're afraid because 600, 700 people standing outside. So yes, you have shelters here, 15 spots, 20 spots. But it's too scary. You have to think of these things that once they were like, you know, obvious. Now, no. Now you have to really think very, very seriously what you're going to do, what events you're going to hold.
So from the beginning of the war, one of our greatest challenges was to properly frame the war. As you know, framing really does the meaning. And everybody talks about Israel against the Palestinians in Gaza. And it was clear for us from the very start that this is not just, a narrow prism of us against Gaza. This is about the Iranian-Israeli war, the first Israel-Iran war. And this is what we try to do, try to make the point of really shouting it out in every possible opportunity. And I think that many people in the world had a difficult time to grasp this up until the moment where Iran directly attacked Israel with cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and attack drones. And for us, it wasn't a big surprise because we saw what Iran is doing on 7 fronts. Lebanon's Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, all the fronts, and Gaza. So I think in that sense, Iran really is pulling all strings here. It's a puppeteer behind all the little proxies around the region, and this is the big challenge. And I think once the West understands that this is not just our war, this is Israel and the West against China, Russia, and Iran combined. So this is really the challenge to explain this, and I think this week, finally, I think the world got a grasp of it.
Do you think that the military leaders understand that Iran is the true enemy, or are they more narrowly focused on the immediate fronts of Gaza and Hezbollah?
I think they understand it. I think the intelligence picture is very clear. It's no secret that Iran is waging a campaign against Israel for years. Even whoever opens Iranian media or even regular media sees it. And I think at that point, it becomes a matter of priorities. Like, how do you prioritize your buildup of force? So Iran is obviously a much bigger threat than Hezbollah or Hamas, and you attempt to build up your force accordingly. But giving the fact that the Iranians mostly build up force and not use force, not operate, they would much rather give it to their proxies. This is the point where Israel has prioritized. Yes, we gather intelligence. Yes, we prepare for an all-out war against Iran. But in the immediate term, what they do is only Lebanon, Gaza, Judea and Samaria. It's already Syria. It's already a big enough challenge.
What does success against Iran look like? I mean, you can't destroy an entire country.
Yeah.
How would Israel successfully wage a war, a campaign against Iran?
I think that once the Iranian octopus doesn't have the tentacles and doesn't have the power to operate, I think that would do for me. Like, I don't need to see a regime change in Iran. Many Israelis would tell you that as long as Iran exists as a regime, the threat will not pass. And they're right, of course. But for now, as long as they keep threatening, but they don't have the means to strike Israel, for me, it's good enough in the short term. And then the Iranian people will, determine whether they want a regime change or not. But right now, I think Israel absolutely must retaliate in a not proportionate manner. Absolutely. I mean, we heard leaks from talks between Joe Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu saying that, you take your win and just intercept the missiles and the rockets. And I think it's a totally inverse approach. In the Middle East, it's a power principle that determines. We saw it just today in the South. It's not enough to just stop an attack. It's really all about, going in there and making sure that they don't have the ability to strike again. I think we have to use that golden opportunity to strike the nuclear facilities in Iran, to strike the ballistic missiles bases. All these things, I think, will leave us with no other choice.
We talk a lot about this October 6th mentality of living in the bubble.
Yeah.
Do you think the attacks of April 14th have really fundamentally changed this country in an understanding of the capacity and interests of Iran?
I think it definitely highlighted for people the threat coming from Iran, but I think Israelis are pretty much used to having threats. We are here in the kibbutz of Saad, and you have bunker protectors right outside a cultural community center right here in the kibbutz. So I don't think these concrete pillars, I don't think it's very common in normal Western countries. And Israelis somehow got used to it, to have bomb shelters right next to bus stops. We just saw it 5 minutes ago. And for me, it just encapsulates how much Israelis are used to this. But in the same time, they also really don't want to have this kind of threat anymore. The October 6th mentality says we can live next to the threat. We can deter. The principle of deterrence. And I think that we cannot keep relying on that any longer.
Moving forward, do you think families want to stay here in this region, or do you think people would rather pack up and move to Tel Aviv, move to Haifa?
So it depends. If it's families that have houses, that they have bought houses in the Moshav, most of them, I'd say 90%, will want to stay. People who have been renting for years, they're thinking about it. They're saying, you know, I don't have anything that holds me to the grounds. I like the Moshav, I like my neighbors, but perhaps I should find a different place, which is further away from the border.
You go to all of these communities and you see many families who have a mother, a father, a child who's on active service in the military, very connected to the IDF. What do you think the citizens in this region think about the IDF right now in terms of its ability to protect them in future conflicts should they arise?
So we divide the military into two. We divide it into the whole commanding, I don't know, how do you call it?
Officers?
Yeah, all of the officers, very highly ranked. We call them October 6th because they're still thinking like this, and they were the same ones that were in October 6th, the same ones are now. And they're telling us everything is fine, and they told us back then everything is fine. So we see them in a certain way, and then we see our soldiers. We see our heroes, we see them fighting, we see them winning, we see them persevering, and that is totally different. My husband is in the Gaza division since the 7th of October. I've got a kid in the Nachal, he's an officer, and next week he's supposed to go inside Gaza.
Wow.
And my daughter, who's a hero, she was in the Navy in Zikim, which is right near the border with Gaza, and she and 8 more of our unit on a very light vessel called a Bumblebee. They're the ones that have managed to stop the invasion into Ashkelon, invasion of Ashkelon. So we believe in our soldiers. I don't think we believe in our highly ranked officers.
Now, before October 7th, I know there was kind of a split on the Gaza border between the Moshavim and the Kibbutzim in terms of their outlook on life, in terms of maybe the religious versus the non-religious. I don't know if that's an accurate description, that there was kind of this division in the communities. Would you say that was the case? And if that was, has anything changed?
I would say it's different regional councils. My regional council is more traditional. Kibbutzad, Alumim are religious. And the regional council of Sha'ar HaNegev is more secular. So there is a difference. We don't have anything, you know, ongoing with them or against us. There's different schools. Some of our families that are secular in the Moshav go to their schools, but no problems in that area.
And post-October 7th, is there more unity in the region, or it's about the same?
It's about the same because now everyone is dispersed all over the country, so we still don't see them. I know that Be'eri are very, very angry about some Moshavim that came back. They made a big party, you know, to return, and they were very upset. And when we came back, when we returned, we thought of doing it, you know, after what has happened with a different Moshav, we thought of doing it more subtle. So we did like an evening of prayer for the safety of the soldiers, the country, and of course the return of the hostages. So that was our way to say we're back. Things are very delicate.
Right. Thank you so much for sitting with me and for sharing all of this.
My pleasure.
For the past 6 months, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of reserve soldiers have been doing their tour of duty, also in the north, also in the south. Most of them were drafted for a period of 6 months. Now we're in preparations for the next stage, also up north, also down south, for the decisive battles in Rafah in the south, and if needed in the north, if it'll burst into a major escalation. In the times between, we've been training. The capabilities of the reserve units have gone up tremendously. Also their equipment. If there's one thing that didn't change in the Miluim with the reserve soldiers, is their fighting spirit. The fighting spirit was high in day number one, and then the fighting spirit has even gone higher, even though they're paying a price. Also the family, also in students who have been some of them deferred their years, and there have been adjustments made that they won't lose the academic year, and also those who were working on their day jobs. But I think what's very important to emphasize is the fighting spirit. This is what we were drafted, this is what we were trained for, this is what we're doing, and I'm sure that any mission that reserve units are going to be given, they'll be able to succeed and bring victory. They're determined, they have the fortitude, and they're just waiting to be called.